Welcome to our deep dive into U.S.-Russia relations.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically, we're going to be looking at a recent interview with Russia's foreign minister,
Oh, okay.
Sergey Lavrov.
Right.
He sat down with Tucker Carlson.
Okay.
And this conversation, kind of away from, I guess, the normal media spotlight,
Yeah.
gives us a really unique perspective on how Russia views its relationship with the U.S., especially now with everything going on in Ukraine.
I see.
So
Yeah.
it's a really fascinating interview.
Yeah.
One of the things that Lavrov really stresses is officially
Uh-huh.
the U.S. and Russia are not at war.
Right.
But then he immediately kind of qualifies that by talking about this idea of a hybrid war.
Yeah. What's interesting about that
Favorite war.
is that he frames it as, officially
Right.
we're not at war, but then
Right.
he brings up this hybrid war
Right.
or favorite war,
Yeah.
where the U.S. is providing substantial military support
Right.
to Ukraine.
Even without direct military engagement.
Yeah.
So it's a very nuanced way of defining the conflict.
It really is.
Yeah.
And he doesn't shy away from expressing
Mm-hmm.
concerns about the U.S. supplying these long-range weapons
Right.
to Ukraine.
Yeah.
He sees this as a very dangerous escalation that could have really devastating consequences,
Yeah.
including, the unthinkable,
Yeah.
a nuclear confrontation.
Right.
And to really kind of underscore that point,
Yeah.
he brings up specifically
Okay.
Russia's Resnik hypersonic missile system.
Okay.
He's not just bringing this up to show off Russia's military power.
Yeah.
But it's a very clear signal
Okay.
to the West.
Yeah. And I think this
It's like he's saying,
connects directly
but
to
we have the capability to respond.
the concept of deterrence.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's something that you often see
Right.
in these types of,
Right.
high stakes.
Right. Geopolitical situations.
It's a chilling reminder of how high the stakes really are.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he goes on to argue that,
Okay.
these tensions really stem from
Yeah.
the U.S. kind of ignoring Russia's security concerns.
Uh-huh.
For years, particularly when it comes to NATO expansion.
Right.
He claims that the U.S. really disregarded warnings
Okay.
and pushed NATO closer and closer
Uh-huh.
to Russia's borders,
Right.
leaving them feeling very cornered.
Yeah. To really grasp Lavrov's perspective here,
Yeah.
I think we need to look back
Okay.
at the historical context.
Right.
So starting with the fall of the Soviet Union,
Yeah.
back then there was this initial hope
Uh-huh.
of Russia integrating with the West,
Okay.
even potentially joining a larger Western bloc.
Right.
Lavrov contends that this never materialized
Right.
because the West,
Uh-huh.
led by the U.S., was never truly interested in a partnership of equals.
He paints a picture of the U.S. seeking to really exploit Russia's vast resources, while at the same time maintaining its global dominance.
Right.
And he's very adamant that this dynamic has fundamentally shifted Russia's stance.
Okay.
Returning to that pre-2022 status quo, in his view, is simply not an option.
This is really a crucial takeaway for anyone following this conflict.
Yeah.
Essentially, Lavrov is arguing that we're witnessing the emergence of a new world order
Right.
where old alliances
Yeah.
are being reconfigured and Russia sees itself at the helm of a bloc-challenging Western influence.
Right.
So the conflict in Ukraine,
Sure.
from his perspective, is merely a symptom
Right.
of this larger geopolitical realignment.
Wow.
And it has the potential to reshape global dynamics as we know them.
That's a very sobering thought,
Yeah,
to say the least.
absolutely.
But he doesn't limit his argument to just the global chessboard.
Okay.
He also brings up Ukraine's domestic policies
Uh-huh.
toward Russian language and culture, claiming that they violate basic human rights
Yeah.
and contribute to the tension
Okay.
that led to this current conflict.
So to understand this, I think we have to go back to Lavrov's telling of the events
Okay.
leading up to the 2014 Maidan uprising in Ukraine.
Right.
He specifically points to then-President Yanukovych's decision
Okay.
to postpone signing an association agreement
Right.
with the EU.
Yeah, and Lavrov contends that.
Yeah.
Yanukovych's hesitation was really driven by
Okay.
legitimate economic concerns,
Uh-huh.
and that Russia had warned him
Okay.
that the EU deal,
Yeah.
as it stood,
Uh-huh.
would be really detrimental to Ukraine's economy,
Right.
especially given its close ties to Russia
Makes sense.
at the time.
Yeah.
So Lavrov argues that instead of engaging in this kind of constructive dialogue to address these very real concerns, the West chose to exploit the situation.
Right.
They supported the Maidan protests,
Right.
which ultimately led to Yanukovych's removal. And in Lavrov's eyes, this is really where the seeds of the current crisis were sown.
Yeah.
So he presents this narrative where the West was determined to pull Ukraine into its sphere of influence,
Right.
regardless of the consequences.
Yeah.
And he expresses this profound skepticism
Okay.
about the potential for genuine peace negotiations,
Yeah.
especially given what he perceives as Western pressure on Ukraine to keep fighting.
Right. So Lavrov outlines Russia's conditions for peace.
Right.
Which include guarantees that Ukraine remains neutral without NATO membership and no foreign military bases on its soil.
Right.
He's essentially calling for this buffer zone between Russia and the West.
Yeah, it's a very different perspective, I think, than what we're often hearing.
Yes, definitely.
And to round out his argument, Lavrov contends that the sanctions imposed on Russia have backfired.
Oh, wow.
Instead of weakening Russia.
Yeah.
He claims they've strengthened its resolve and pushed it towards greater cooperation with countries outside the Western sphere.
So it's almost like he's saying, look, you tried to pressure us, but you've only made us more determined.
It's really fascinating.
Yeah.
And it has significant implications for how this conflict might unfold and for the future of global power dynamics. So it's
definitely
a really thought-provoking interview.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it really is.
And it leads us to kind of another crucial point that Lavrov brings up. And that's the Minsk agreements.
Right.
He seems to really genuinely believe that if those agreements had been fully implemented, the current conflict could have been avoided altogether.
He goes into quite a bit of detail about the Minsk process.
Yeah.
You know, outlining how Russia felt that Ukraine was not upholding its end of the bargain.
Right.
And this, he argues, ultimately led to Russia's decision to launch what they call this special military operation.
He places a lot of emphasis on this sense of betrayal.
Right.
Suggesting that Russia felt backed into a corner with no other options.
Yeah.
But it is worth acknowledging that, you know, interpretations of the Minsk agreements and their implications vary widely.
Absolutely. There are different perspectives on what those agreements entailed and who bears responsibility for their failure. However, from Lavrov's point of view, the Minsk process represented this missed opportunity for a peaceful resolution. And he sees the West as largely culpable for that failure.
He argues that the West, and particularly the U.S., escalated the situation by encouraging Ukraine to pursue NATO membership and providing military support, which he believes emboldened Ukraine to take a harder stance against Russia.
This ties back into Lavrov's broader assertion that the West never truly accepted Russia as a legitimate partner. So instead of working towards a European security architecture that included Russia, he argues the West sought to marginalize and contain Russia's influence.
It's a compelling argument. And it forces us to consider, you know, whether Western policies over the past few decades might inadvertently contributed to the current crisis.
And it makes you wonder. You know,
could there have been missed opportunities for cooperation?
Yeah.
Did we fail to adequately address Russia's security concerns?
Right.
These are tough questions.
They are.
And even if we don't fully agree with Lavrov's analysis, it's crucial to grapple with these different perspectives.
Absolutely. I think ultimately finding a path to peace requires understanding the motivations and viewpoints of all parties involved, even those we might disagree with.
That's precisely what makes deep dives like this so valuable.
I think so too.
Right.
I think they challenge us to step outside of our own echo chambers and engage with perspectives that might make us uncomfortable or question our assumptions.
Right.
It's not about blindly accepting everything Lavrov says.
Right.
It's about listening.
Yeah.
Trying to understand where he's coming from and seeing the world, at least for a moment, through his eyes.
Right.
That's how we can begin to bridge the divides that have led to this tragic conflict.
It's a complex situation with no easy answers.
Very true.
But Lavrov's interview offers a valuable glimpse into the Russian perspective.
Yeah.
And that understanding, I think, is essential.
Absolutely.
If we hope to find a way forward.
For sure.
One of the most striking aspects, I think, of Lavrov's interview is his focus on the historical dimension.
Yeah.
You know, he sees this conflict as the culmination of a long process of Western encroachment on Russia's sphere of influence.
He paints this picture of a Russia that feels betrayed and surrounded. Its security concerns repeatedly ignored by the West.
Right.
He seems to believe that this conflict was in many ways inevitable.
Yeah. It was
bound to happen at some point.
Right. And he's very clear that there's no going back to the old order.
Yeah. He believes that the world has fundamentally changed.
Right.
That the era of unipolar American dominance is over.
Right.
And that a new multipolar order is emerging.
This is a key takeaway, I think.
Yes, definitely.
For anyone trying to understand the broader geopolitical landscape.
Absolutely.
Right. It means that we're entering this new phase of international relations.
Right.
One characterized by shifting alliances, greater competition, and unfortunately, a heightened risk of conflict.
Lavrov points to Russia's strengthening ties with China, India, and other non-Western nations as evidence of this shift.
Right.
He argues that the West's attempts to isolate Russia have actually pushed these countries closer together, creating this powerful counterweight to Western influence.
It's a fascinating development.
It is.
And it raises all kinds of questions.
Yeah.
About how this new multipolar world will function.
Exactly.
Will it be a world of cooperation and mutual respect?
Right.
Or will it be defined by rivalry and conflict?
Who knows?
Right.
That remains to be seen.
Yeah.
But it's clear that the old rules of the game are no longer in play.
Right.
And Lavrov's interview offers this window into how Russia sees its role in this emerging world order.
Another key takeaway, I think, from the interview is Lavrov's perspective on the sanctions imposed on Russia. He claims that the sanctions have backfired.
Oh, wow.
Strengthening Russia's resolve.
Okay.
And pushing it towards greater self-reliance.
So he's saying that they've actually had the opposite effect of what was intended.
He argues that the sanctions have forced Russia to diversify its economy, to reduce its dependence on the West, and forge these new partnerships with non-Western countries.
He's really presenting Russia as this country that's adapting to the new reality and finding strength in its independence from the West.
It's a bold claim.
Yeah.
And it certainly challenges, I think, the conventional wisdom
for sure
about the effectiveness of sanctions.
Right.
Whether or not Lavrov is right about their long-term impact remains to be seen.
That's true.
But his perspective underscores the complex and often unpredictable consequences of economic warfare. And it highlights the need, I think, to carefully consider the potential unintended consequences of sanctions before deploying them.
It's a reminder that in international relations, actions often have these ripple effects that extend far beyond their intended targets.
Right.
And it's crucial to be aware of those potential consequences before making decisions that could have far-reaching implications.
Absolutely. And this brings us back to Lavrov's broader argument about the need for this new world order. He envisions this world based on mutual respect, dialogue, and a recognition of the legitimate security concerns of all nations. Not just those aligned with the West.
It's a vision that challenges the existing global power structure. And it raises many questions about the future of international relations.
Will the West be willing to adapt to this new reality? Or are we going to see a continuation of the current confrontational approach?
These are crucial questions. And the stakes are incredibly high.
They are.
The conflict in Ukraine is a tragedy.
It is.
For all involved.
Yeah.
And the risk of escalation, even to a nuclear level, is a chilling reminder of the potential consequences of our choices.
Lavrov's interview doesn't offer any easy answers.
No.
But it does provide, I think, a valuable perspective that we can't afford to ignore.
We can't.
It's a reminder that there are always multiple sides to every story.
Absolutely.
And that understanding those sides is essential if we want to find a path towards a more peaceful and just world.
And that's what we strive for here at Standing in the Gaps, to bring you those different perspectives, to challenge your assumptions, and to help you make sense of a complex and rapidly changing world.
We believe that knowledge is power, and that by understanding the world around us, we can make more informed choices, both individually and collectively.
Absolutely.
And we're incredibly grateful.
We are.
For your support in helping us achieve that mission.
Yeah, it's about engaging in these challenging conversations, seeking out knowledge and understanding so we can all play a role in shaping a better future.
Absolutely.
Speaking of which, we wanted to take a moment to talk about our own efforts to broaden these kinds of conversations through our Standing in the Gaps podcast.
Yeah, we're really passionate about bringing you these deep dives, unpacking complex global issues like this interview with Lavrov, and making them accessible and engaging. We believe it's more important than ever for people to have access to these diverse perspectives, to go beyond the headlines and really understand the forces shaping our world. Exactly, and we've been thinking a lot about how to reach an even wider audience, and how to boost our production quality, to make the listening experience even more immersive. So we've launched a GoFundMe campaign.
Awesome.
And our goal is to invest in better equipment.
Okay.
Things like webcams so we can connect with you visually.
I like that.
Studio microphones for crystal clear audio.
Makes sense.
And powerful editing computers to really create these seamless episodes.
Okay.
All of these enhancements are really going to help us bring these crucial global topics to life.
Absolutely.
And we believe that even small contributions can make a big difference.
Yeah, I think so too.
In helping us achieve these goals.
For sure.
It's about building a community. And every bit of support allows us to continue providing these valuable insights.
If you find value in what we do and you want to support our mission, please consider visiting our GoFundMe page. Every contribution helps us grow and reach more listeners.
Now, back to our final thoughts on Lavrov's interview.
Okay.
It's clear, I think, that he leaves us with this rather stark choice. Either the West accepts a new world order where Russia plays this leading role, or we face a future of escalating confrontation.
It's a sobering assessment.
It is.
It really raises a whole host of questions about global security, the balance of power, and the very nature of international relations in this new era.
So here's a final thought for you to ponder.
Okay.
Given Lavrov's perspective, what role, if any, can the U.S. play in shaping this new world order? Can we find a way to engage with Russia, to acknowledge their legitimate interests while upholding our own values? Or are we destined for a return to this Cold War-style rivalry with all the risks and uncertainties that such a scenario entails?
That's the big question.
These are questions with no easy answers. But they're questions we must confront.
We have to.
If you're to create a more peaceful and stable future.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everybody.
We hope it's given you a new perspective on this complex and challenging issue. And remember, knowledge is power.
It is.
And the more we understand about the world around us, the better equipped we are to navigate the challenges ahead.